Welcome back to the Empire Builders Podcast. Dave Young here alongside Steven Semple. And Steven, you just told me the subject of today's podcast, and I don't have a lot for you. I know it's in Pennsylvania. I know I've eaten probably a metric ton of it over the course of my lifetime.
A proper ton.
Without, even giving a thought as to how this company ever started and how they built this empire. I just gobble it down. In fact, we keep a basket of those in the Wizard Academy classroom, and oh my God, they're the bane of my existence.
They probably go well.
So let's hear the story.
Well, Hershey's is the great American chocolate bar, right?
Yeah.
So Hershey's was founded in 1894 in Pennsylvania by Milton Hershey. And today you can buy their chocolate in 60 countries. They've got 19 plants, 16,000 employees. They make 70 million candies a day.
70 million a day.
A day. They do 8 billion in sales.
I'm going to give up. I'm never going to keep up with that. I can't eat 70 million a day.
That's definitely a Lucille Ball moment at the end of that, that assembly line.
Yeah.
So, and they're estimated to be worth, close to $2 billion, and they do 8 billion in sales. So big deal. Big deal. And a crazy story. When I came across this, was like, this is nuts. So Milton started as an apprentice to a candy maker. And in 1873, he opened a candy shop. His first candy shop he opened was in Philadelphia. And he had it for 6 years, and it failed. Then he moved to Denver, where he became an apprentice for a confectioner, where he learned to make caramels. And he returned to New Jersey to do business with his dad, making cough drops, and that failed. So he decided to return to selling candy to make some money. And his plans were to make caramels, but the way he learned them in Denver. So who he learned from in Denver was how to make caramels with milk, not paraffin. And the result tastes better and frankly has a longer shelf life as well. So it was creamier, smoother, and lasted longer. And no one in the East were making them that way. Okay. So in the summer of 1886, he asked his family for a loan because he's broke and he's dodging debt collectors, and he's had many failed businesses. So guess what Guess what the family said?
Yes.
No, they actually said no.
They said no.
They said no. Yeah. Like, dude, your track record is really not there. We're not going to give you money. But he pushes ahead and he decides to start the Lancaster Caramel Company in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And he starts small. He's walking the streets to sell the caramels. Then he grows a little bit and he gets a cart. And then he gets a location. And by this time, the family's seen the success in this, and the family backs a loan for him to build a factory.
They want a piece of it now. I see how they are.
So they lend him some money to get a factory, and he gets overextended. In 1887, he's close to failing. Like, he's literally on the edge. And he gets an order from an importer to England for $2,400 worth of caramels. And to put that in perspective, up to this time, he's been selling small bags for a penny. So $2,400 order is huge.
I'm thinking $2,400 worth of caramel that's a lot of caramel today. More than I'm going to eat anyway, unless it's really expensive. $2,400 back then. Wow, yeah. That's a lot.
Well, this order is enough that he clears his debts and he starts to expand. And he starts making different products. He makes square caramels and circle and bean-shaped. He also makes a different line. He makes an expensive whole milk caramel that sells for $1 a box, along with his less expensive skim milk ones that are 10 for a penny. So he does here's a really fancy one. And he makes one with cocoa and nuts, and he's now exporting as far away as Japan. Within 5 years, he's employing 700 workers. In the early 1890s, Milton Hershey is one of the richest men in Pennsylvania. And he's the biggest caramel maker in the United States.
But so up to this point, it's mostly caramel.
All caramel.
Okay.
Until 1893. 7 years after starting the caramel business, he's at the World's Fair in Chicago.
There we go again, the World's Fair.
This famous World's Fair that has impacted so many businesses, this huge thing that had 27 million people visit it in a year. And he's walking through one of the pavilions and he notices the smell of chocolate. And he sees this fully functioning chocolate bar assembly line. And this is new. People have been drinking chocolate forever, but the first chocolate bar was in England in 1847, about 50 years earlier, but it remained a very expensive luxury. But now he sees this fully functioning chocolate bar assembly line, and this machine makes chocolate more affordable. On the spot, Hershey's buys the equipment, says when the fair is over, I'll take the equipment, buys the equipment. Because what he feels is that people will eat chocolate every day. A year later, he has the equipment up and running, and he starts the Hershey Chocolate Company.
Who invented this machine, and why was it at the fair? Was it just fair food? Was it somebody just making chocolate bars for people to eat?
Yes, that was it.
Okay.
They were making fair food. I don't know who invented the machinery, but they were making fair food. And basically what he said is, you don't have to ship that equipment back to where it came from. I'll take it.
Okay. No, he saw that he's going to take this mainstream. This is not just turkey leg on a stick.
So he's making chocolate bars and little cigarettes and gems and flowers. And it makes way less money than the Carmel business, but he feels like it has more volume potential. And along comes 1884, 4 years after starting to make chocolate, Milton notices that the sales of Carmel is really starting to drop in the UK. And he discovers tastes are changing. People are losing interest in Carmel, but there's also this new chocolate that has come along that they want that is even less expensive, and that is milk chocolate.
Yeah.
Not the dark chocolate that Hershey is making now, but milk chocolate. And he notices others have figured out how the Swiss are making that chocolate, because originally it was the Swiss that started with the milk chocolate. That was Nestle. And Cadbury, an English company, figured out how to do it. And Cadbury has become so big in England that they've built a huge factory in a whole town and housing project. Like Cadbury's built this whole industrial town to support this making of this milk chocolate. And this inspires Hershey. He decides this is what he's going to do. He's going to do what Cadbury did. But making milk chocolate is a heavily guarded secret, but he figures if Cadbury can figure it out, so can he. So here's what Hershey decides to do. He decides to make milk chocolate in the United States, and in 1900, he sells the Caramel Company for $1 million.
Okay.
Says, I'm out of caramels. I'm going to focus all my attention on milk chocolate. He's all in.
Stay tuned. We're going to wrap up this story and tell you how to apply this lesson to your business right after this.
2 words: lead flow. If you want to grow your business, lead flow is, well, not everything, but it sure can feel that way.
You feel the need? The need for leads.
And then there's the gnawing questions that plague you whenever you try to boost lead flow. Are you targeting the right customer? Are you saying the right things? Are you advertising in the right places? Are you spending too much or too little? And the ever-present, how can I best use social media? What if you could get those questions answered definitively in 90 minutes? You'd no longer feel the need for leads because now you'd know how to get them. That's what Empire Builders is offering you right now for free and with a guarantee to boot. Go to empirebuildersprogram.com, book a 90-minute Zoom meeting with the Empire Building expert, and boom! Questions answered, problems solved. We'll give you the real answers, guaranteed.
Guaranteed.
Yes, our famous no pitching and no bitching guarantee. First, we won't pitch you at all. Seriously.
If you want to work with us beyond our meeting, you'll have to explicitly ask about moving forward.
And the bitchin' part?
If you're not satisfied with the answers, say the word.
And I'll pay you cold hard cash for your wasted time. No hard feelings.
Now that's a guarantee.
Look, Empire Builders take action. If lead flow is an issue for you, take action on it.
Book your Zoom meeting at empirebuildersprogram.com.
Let's pick up our story where we left off, and trust me, you haven't missed a thing.
Here's what's crazy. Here's how all in he is. This is pushing all the chips across the table. So you sold the caramel company, you got $1 million, you're going to do this milk chocolate, you don't know how to make it, but guess what you're going to start doing? Your goal is you're going to make this milk chocolate for a nickel. You start building the factory and the town, just like Cadbury did. You've not got a product, you don't know how to make it, you don't got a sale, I'm building a huge factory and a town.
Welcome to Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Welcome to Hershey, Pennsylvania. Oh, and by the way, I don't know how to make milk chocolate, but I figure I'll figure it out.
How hard could it be?
How hard can it be? Here's the problem. The water in the milk doesn't want to blend with the fatty chocolate cocoa butter. It's like water and oil. And when they come together, the bars are crumbly and spoil quickly. But he knows it's possible. So while the town and factory are being built, he's quickly trying to figure out how to make this milk chocolate. It takes him 3 years to figure it out.
I can picture him sending it's like Slugworth spies going into Willy Wonka's plant.
Well, imagine the pressure of trying to figure that out. You're watching the factory being built. You're watching the town being built. And the only thing that stands in your way is, how do I make this? Insane. And finally, he figures it out. And the key is to use condensed milk because condensed milk has less water in it. It's a slightly different flavor than the European chocolate, so it's not the same formulation. But Americans haven't tried the European chocolate, so he's like, there's not going to be a comparison. They don't know any better. So by 1905, he's got the chocolate bars in the store, and they sell like hotcakes. In 1907, he launches Kisses. 1908, almond bars. The town grows. He builds a zoo in the town. He builds a leisure park in the town. He was an orphan, so he opens a school for orphan boys. And in March 1915, his wife Kitty dies from pneumonia, and they had no kids. And so what Milton decides to do is give the company to an orphanage. So he starts the Orphan Boys of America, and he gives the company in its entirety to that charity. And that charity today is still the largest shareholder and owns the majority voting stock of Hershey's chocolate, is owned by the Orphans Boys of America.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that crazy?
That's amazing.
It is amazing. So every time now that you open up one of those chocolates at the tower, a good chunk of that profit is actually going to a charity.
I feel so much better now about eating chocolate.
Yeah. But what a crazy story. Like, you've got this successful business that is high margin, and yes, sales are starting to drop off. You've got this other business that you haven't figured out yet, but you know is lower margin, but you believe has the potential to be higher volume, and you sell the one and roll the whole way to the other one. Like, that's kind of like Andy Grove and Gordon Moore with Intel back in episode 31, right? Mm-hmm. Where they asked themselves the question of, if we didn't have all this history holding us back, what would we do? You know, so often we see businesses, especially where there's a high margin one that's declining and the new business with low margin, that so often they can't make that pivot. Mm-hmm. Right? It's so hard to give up that high margin business. Now, I admire the fact, and I think it was brilliant that he sold the Carmel business, because that meant he's all in, he's focused, he's burned, he's landed on the beaches and burned the boats, there's no going back. And I admire that. That clarity is fantastic. The crazy part was building the factory in the town before he had it figured out. I think that was a little nuts.
Well, he seemed to have seen and believed what was going on in the chocolate world with Cadbury and Nestle, at least in Europe. And man, the brilliant move to me is he saw the decline in caramel and found a buyer instead of riding that thing right into the ground.
Well, yes, because he saw it early enough that others would still see the potential in that business.
Somebody would look at it and say, oh, this is a profitable business right now. And he's probably not telling them what he sees as the future of caramel. And I don't know if what was it? The Hershey, it wasn't the Hershey Caramel Company. It was
No, it was the what the heck was it again? The Lancaster Carmel company.
Lancaster Carmel. Are they still around?
I
Who
don't know
knows?
because I don't even know who bought them and whether they would have changed the name.
They're
I
not
didn't
a-
chase down
they're-
that rabbit hole.
They're not an empire that comes to mind, I guess is my point.
Very true. They are not an empire that comes to mind. But you also point out a couple of interesting things. And again, we're always talking about this from innovation and building empires. He saw things in other places, right? He saw what was going on in the UK, both in terms of what was happening with Carmel sales, but also what Cadbury was doing, and said, wow, I could do that in America. But his first exposure to chocolate was walking in to that pavilion, right? And sort of going, wow, what is this? What is this? What is this thing? And buying equipment, right? So he didn't have the blinders on of, oh, I'm in the Carmel business.
Yeah. You know that he'd been sampling a lot of chocolates by the time he built that factory, right?
Oh, gosh, yes.
He had all the confidence in the world that this was going to work.
He sure did.
And the fact that they were doing it, the fact that Cadbury had built a town in England to do this, that had to give you a little confidence.
Oh, for sure. You know, the first year of innovation would have been fun. The second year would have been the third year. Man, you want to talk about pressure.
Yeah.
Man, the town and the factory are almost finished.
We got to find a formula.
We got to find a formula, like right now. We are going to do an episode in future on Eastman Kodak. And when we do the one on Eastman Kodak, I want people to remember this story, because the question will be really asked about if Eastman Kodak had acted like Milton Hershey, would their future have turned out differently? A little preview of things to come.
Good story. I'm going to go have a Hershey Nugget, Steve. Thank
There you go, and you're going to feel good about it now.
I feel great about it. I'm helping the orphan boys. That's all I'm doing here.
That's it.
Standing here eating chocolate.
Just like giving money. All right, thanks, David.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Please share us, subscribe on your favorite podcast app, and leave us a big, fat, juicy 5-star rating and review. And if you have any questions about this or any other podcast episode, email to questions@theempirebuilderspodcast.com.